How's it going, guys? Stuart here. Full name today because it's a very special occasion, all right? We got new ruddy Lord of the Rings content to absorb. Feels weird to even be thinking that, but it's fine. We've got new Lord of the Rings stuff to watch. I am, of course, talking about Amazon's big old new Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power. I saw a Ring of Power once. Yeah, it was when I... That's right, the premiere of Season 1 of Amazon's Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. That was a mouthful. It's finally out on our little screens this week, and I caught it early because I was, I guess, lucky. And boy, oh boy, do we have some stuff to chat about. Before we get chatting good and proper, listen, if you like what I'm chatting about, if you like seeing my dumb face, go down there, click subscribe, click the bell icon. Everybody's happy. Social links as well, letterboxed as well. That's it. I feel like we do need a bit of backstory here, so we're going to give it. I've never read the Lord of the Rings books, but gosh darn it, am I a huge fan of the trilogy. You know what I'm talking about. Peter Jackson's OG. Maybe the greatest trilogy of all time. Hobbit comes out. Listen, Petey, big yikes. I do like technically more of the Hobbit trilogy than I dislike, but it ended badly, and ultimately, did we need it? And it did a lot of things not very well, didn't it? Did leave a bit of a sour taste in all of our mouths, didn't it? So when Amazon announced that they were throwing money at a new Lord of the Rings TV series, I think it was sort of half, okay, and then half, or maybe more than half, please don't do this, Amazon, don't do it. So long story short, my expectations going into this season are sort of, they're there, like I'm interested and I'm excited to see if they pull it off. But also I'm sort of cautious and I don't actually know that it's gonna be that good. So it brings me immense joy to say that I was thoroughly impressed with this shit. Good God, this slap. I'm almost not even sure exactly how to attack this other than just saying it's very good, because the internet wants to take things to either like best thing ever or worst thing ever, right? Listen, there's so much going on in this series that I think everyone's gonna have so many different opinions on because it's Lord of the Rings. But I think the main two things people want to know really is, does it feel like Lord of the Rings, and is it better than The Hobbit, right? Like, we're in agreement there? And I'm happy to say that I think on both of those counts, yes is the answer. There are a lot of elements in here that made me feel a lot of the same emotions and feelings that I had when I was watching Lord of the Rings. But on the other question, yes, it is immediately 2 episodes into a season much better than The Hobbit. And The Hobbit overall, like there are elements of it where I was like, I'm happy to watch this story, but it did feel ultimately like we were watching something being stretched out and milked for us. And this is something that I was surprised to see from an Amazon series, which they had purportedly spent, what, $1 billion on or something, and that Jeff Bezos has been like, this is my pet project or whatever, this is what I want to do well. I'm surprised that that is the thing that didn't feel like it was milking it as much as The Hobbit from Peter Jackson. Weird. But ultimately, from the first few hours of this thing, it somehow does feel like we're in a world that we've already been in, and we're seeing things, and it feels a little bit like settling back into a nice comfy chair in many ways, but also absolutely feels like a new vision and a new story that we're being told, new characters. It feels fresh enough to feel worthwhile. And I was genuinely so impressed with how the first 2 episodes of this thing really juggled all of that really effectively. Just the sheer volume of character arcs and story threads that are being set up and the way it needs to cut between those. There's always that risk that you're going to cut to something and maybe one part of it's not going to feel as satisfying as the other, and you're always going to be thinking, hey, I just want to be going and seeing that stuff. Oh, like, can we go back over there, point the camera over there? There wasn't really much of that here at all. Like, there were definitely threads that I'm more interested in, but nothing dropped the ball, and everything felt engaging, and everything felt like it fluidly wove between it all. And in terms of narrative, look, obviously we're 2 episodes into a, 10-episode season. Shows evolve through their seasons, so it's very difficult to know exactly where things are going to go, and often where it ends up going in a season can change the way you viewed it at the start. But from what we've seen here in these 2 episodes, narratively, it's doing a really impressive job of establishing the stakes and building up the story and the mystery and the threat, whilst introducing all these new characters to us. I think that's one of the reasons it's paced so well, is that J.A. Bayona as a director is doing a lot of that stuff at the same time. He's a very visual storyteller in that sense, and that definitely helps here, because that means it can do a lot more in the sequences we're seeing. It can have sequences that are action-packed and fun and satisfying and ticking the adventure box, that are simultaneously at the same time telling us a lot about these characters. But obviously, look, budget helps in all of this, and Amazon clearly threw a lot of money at this thing, but it does look amazing. That was one of the things I was a bit cautious about as well. There are bits and trailers that you see online that you go, is this gonna be worthy of being, what, the most expensive series ever made? Happy to report, it all looked amazing. Naturally, having seen it on an IMAX screen is going to impact my thoughts on that. So I just want to preface that by saying, like, I watched this on a big IMAX screen, not on a TV at home. So it's going to look different. And naturally, obviously, audiences around the world aren't going to have that same big IMAX experience. So just maybe that's just an asterisk on everything I'm saying here visually. But it all looked really, really well. The CGI was great. The blending of the practical and the CGI all really, really worked. I'm not going to lie, there are absolutely moments where you go, yep, green screen. But it's a sign of good effects and effects that are done well and are well thought through, that even though you can tell that things are green screen, or even though you know something is CGI, it still works and it doesn't detract from how engaging a sequence is. If you're someone that doesn't like seeing CGI, it's in it. I don't want to say there's CGI in Amazon's $1 billion TV series. Surprise. But the core aspects of what I love so much about all of the great Lord of the Rings stuff we've seen on screen before, that original trilogy, really comes down to two things for me. And that is the sense of adventure and just kind of thrill of watching this all unfold. And two, the relationships at the core of it. The characters in the original trilogy, you just grew to love so much that it just was, I don't know, I just love watching them. And on those two fronts, this thing shows incredible promise this early on in the season. Adventure is definitely there. Like the 2 episodes I saw were not short of big spectacle and adventure and set pieces. And the intrigue around the threat in this series, the way it seems to be slowly creeping into our characters' lives, it's setting up really, really well. And if they pull it off the rest of the season, I do think it's going to really land that. In the same way that the Hobbits were sort of thrown into stuff they didn't want to be thrown into. I like that aspect, the sort of fish out of water feel of the original trilogy. It does feel like it's there in a lot of different threads on this series, which is nice. But on the other end of things, the relationships feel like they're going places that I think are going to be really, really satisfying. There were relationships in here that just felt very natural and very authentic and had a lot of heart to them. There is one character duo that I'm not sure on yet, that I hope becomes a bit more believable and engaging. It's not that bad, but they're definitely the weaker link relationship-wise. But everyone else, I just really enjoyed watching them, and I like watching them all chat together. I say, it's not like they all gather around a table with every character in here and just have a good old chit-chat. But the characters that are paired together, the different sort of groups in different locations, are just fun to watch. The highlight for me at the moment has to be the dwarfs and all that stuff going on. Everything to do with the dwarfs here. There's not a huge amount in these 2 episodes, but when we got there, I've just stupidly fun stuff. And that's definitely helped by the fact that the whole cast, and it's a big cast, are just throwing themselves into it in every aspect. It's definitely much more engaging for that. I'm not going to go through everyone in the cast because I'd be here for decades maybe. But there are a few standouts for me, so we're going to go through them. Morfydd Clark as Galadriel. I guess she is kind of the lead of this thing, but it's an ensemble. She's not really the lead, but her storyline is definitely the one that feels like it's got a lot of weight to it. But she's so good. I loved her in everything she's done before this, and I love her in this. But it's nice to see a character we know in a slightly different light, and I like what Morfydd's bringing to that. She's got a lot of fire to her and this kind of warrior vibe, which could have gone one of 2 ways. I'm happy to report is very, very engaging and satisfying. I'm liking that shit. She's really, really good. But I was also really, really impressed with Markella Kavanagh, who plays Nori here, who is just so, I don't know how to put it really, just supremely wholesome to watch. I just really enjoyed watching her character thread, and her part of these 2 episodes isn't perhaps the most immediately impactful and big and spectacle driven, but it does feel like it's setting up to be one of the more important character threads, and I just like what she's bringing to that character. Here's something else that's really good though, the score. Now listen, I'm gonna say it, I think no one's gonna disagree with me, are they? Like, no one's disagreeing with this shit. But Howard Shore's score for the original trilogy has to be one of the best scores of all time. I mean, it just is. We all know it. I was worried about the score for this thing, just because I didn't want them to just imitate his score, and I also just didn't want them to fuck up trying too hard to make the score this big new thing in the same way that Howard Shore did. But Bear McCreary here has done a really, really good job with the score in sort of delivering new stuff and a score that doesn't feel derivative of the OG trilogy's score, but also feeling like it touches on a lot of the elements of the original one. It feels like it fits in the world of the original score. It doesn't yet feel as immediately kind of hooky as Howard Shore's original score. Maybe that's just a question of time at this point. I mean, that trilogy's however many years old, and we just know that score now, and we can hum along to every beat of it. But at the moment, Ben McCreary's score doesn't seem to have that hook to it, but it does work really, really well for the series, and that's the most important thing, I think. It doesn't detract from anything, it only complements everything that we're seeing on screen, and it gets epic when it needs to get epic, and it quietens down when it needs to quieten down. And every department feels like that. Like the sets, the costume design, the makeup, the music, the direction, the writing, just every department working on this thing does genuinely feel like they know exactly how to deliver what they need to deliver. There's a lot of sincerity in this, and I think everyone involved clearly wants to make something good, and they have made something seriously impressive. It surprisingly really, really effectively balanced just being a super fun time and a super engaging and intriguing time. But ultimately, I was surprised at how quickly I sank back into just feeling comfortable watching stuff being made in this world, being back in Middle-earth. It just felt so good. And I'm so happy that it felt like that. What a relief that they pulled it off. I almost can't quite believe it, because if they've pulled this off with this opening of the season, and they managed to pull this off for this entire season, I'm almost giddy at the possibilities of where this season might end up going. This is probably, and this is going to sound like hyperbole, but I genuinely can't think of the last season opener that was this good. Like the last time I was this hooked this early on a season. But what about you guys? Have you caught Rings of Power yet? Are you gonna watch it when it drops on Amazon? Who am I kidding? You'll watch. If you clicked on this video, you're gonna watch it, right? Everyone is gonna have very different opinions on this thing because of the scope and the scale of this. So do let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. We'll have a little chat. Let's try and keep it spoiler free, but I appreciate that's going to be difficult. But let me know what you thought either way. And while you're down there, click subscribe, hit the bell button if you want to see me chat about more shit in the future. I won't be reviewing every episode here on out of Rings of Power, but I will come back at the end of the season and give my review of the entire thing in retrospect. And we'll see where it ended up going and whether things ended up changing from my initial thoughts here. I can't imagine they're going to drop the ball too up. It could happen. Who fucking knows? I will, of course, see you guys soon for some more thoughts on more films. But until next time, Lord of the Rings is back, baby. It is back. Boom, 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 boom. Can't believe I've just done this on camera.